Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome to Impact 2022 and this keynote presentation on tailoring your processes to be as data-driven as your systems. My name is James McGill, and I'm a coach, team builder, and avid woodworker based here in New York City. I have over 10 years experience building high-performing engineering teams at both startups and Google. During that time, I've learned the importance of building the right processes and team structures to empower teams to achieve success. Today, I lead the engineering team at CodeClimate, a company dedicated to helping every engineering team maximize their impact with data-driven insights that help leads focus on the right challenges. Today, we're going to cover 4 main topics: what it means to build observability into your processes, how engineering data can power that observability, how we've seen engineering data applied to solve real-world problems, and finally, how you, as a leader, can use engineering data to empower your teams to truly excel. Let's talk about observability. Engineering leaders have long recognized the importance of building observability into their software and their infrastructure. Through testing, monitoring, and detailed reporting, most engineering teams have a deep understanding of what their systems are doing and where they aren't working as expected. In putting this monitoring in place, we emphasize the importance of responsiveness, ensuring that we're able to identify and fix a problem before it causes downstream impact. But what do we have in place for our teams? As leaders, we put significant time and energy into creating an environment that allows our teams to thrive. We invest in the constant evolution of our organizational structure, the development of processes to help teams deliver great software, and the way we approach hiring, onboarding, and team composition. However, surveys show that many teams lack confidence in their ability to assess whether these decisions are having the desired impact. While we use our best judgment and feedback from our teams to get a sense for whether a particular process or framework is working, teams often don't have the tools in place to back that intuition with real data. The process equivalent of being paged is often missing an important deadline for a feature. The analog to having something that catches an exception when it comes to the way you've designed your organization might be a team member putting in their notice. In both cases, you're left operating reactively, missing your opportunity to identify and fix the problem before it causes an outage. What if we could do better? We can, by building observability into the ways we work as a team. So what does this mean? Observability is more than just monitoring. It's about measuring what is happening and placing that data in context. It's about taking a holistic approach that emphasizes exploration and enables identification of the unknown unknowns. I think that this definition from Gartner is particularly important to internalize. As leaders, it's important for us to acknowledge that we are not omnipotent. While our job is to understand and to listen to our team, there will always be areas where we have less visibility and less understanding than we would like. We need to build observability into our teams so we can work towards identifying, diagnosing, and solving the organizational problems that we may not otherwise see before they become unfixable. The key to creating that observability is engineering data. So, what is engineering data? Engineering data is the information about what your team is working on, how that work is going, and critically, how your team is approaching that work and how they are working together. Hiding within this data are hugely valuable insights, which combined with the context that you have as a leader, can help you understand issues like where work is stuck or at risk of not being completed on time, where team members may need additional support, and how effectively you are onboarding new team members and how quickly they are becoming fully ramped contributors to the team. Engineering data can also help you evaluate whether the changes you're making are helping or hurting, and where additional capacity would improve a team's speed or could slow them down. Let's take a look at a couple of examples of where engineering data can provide observability into how your teams are working today. The most exciting thing is that this data is already available by integrating with the tools that your team uses today. Tools like GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, Jira, and PagerDuty. While extracting, analyzing, and understanding that data can be difficult without the right tools, collecting that data doesn't require that your team changes the way they work. Let's take a look at a couple of the questions that you can answer by taking this data-driven approach. Something we take a close look at CodeClimate is how quickly we're moving as a team. To do this, we observe a metric called cycle time. This is the time between when work first starts on an issue and when the code for that work makes it into production. This is our speedometer. It measures how quickly work is making it in front of our users, and by extension, how quickly we get the opportunity to learn. Another important question to answer is how well your team is collaborating. An important piece of this puzzle is your review speed, the time taken for a reviewer to review an open pull request. Paying attention to this metric helps you understand where there might be bottlenecks in your development processes. This metric can also help to identify where different people may have different expectations, allowing you to focus on creating alignment before those different expectations lead to friction. Finally, it can be valuable to take a look at how much work each person on your team is juggling. When the amount of work in flight is higher than the number of developers on your team, it may be a signal that the team is getting pulled in too many directions and that developers are overloaded. Research shows that the net result tends to be slower delivery, and that by creating room and permission to focus, you have the opportunity to both accelerate your team and create a better and stronger working environment. Now, for the million-dollar question, does this data and the answer to these questions actually help you drive change? And if so, how do you make it happen? Let's walk through an example from CodeClimate's own history. At the beginning of 2020, CodeClimate, like most other companies, transitioned rapidly to being a fully distributed team with limited time to prepare for that change. As big believers in engineering data, the team was already collecting and checking in on several key metrics. From this, we observed a very interesting change as we shifted to remote work, a substantial decrease at the rate at which we were landing code. A measure of this was pull request throughput. As a team, we work hard to keep our pull requests to a small and consistent size in order to facilitate speedier reviews, which means that our pull request throughput provides a solid indication of how much work is actually making it into our production branch, while controlling for things like the size of a feature or complexity in a particular area of the codebase. However, at the same time that we saw a decrease in pull request throughput, we could clearly see several other trends in our data that made this a real head-scratcher. The data clearly showed that team members were working just as many hours, if not more, than before the transition to remote, and that developers were pushing more commits than they had before. Given these trends, we would have expected more code to be landing in production, not less. As a team, we dug further into the data and found something very interesting. While the team was producing a large volume of code, a significant proportion of that was rework, commits that were making significant changes to code that had been recently written. This was our issue. We were working just as hard, but consistently having to revisit work that we thought had been completed. Armed with that information, we were able to guide our discussions as a team to identify the true root cause, a decrease in context since shifting to being remote. Without the informal knowledge sharing happening in the office, engineers were getting left in the dark. Communication was fragmented, occurring via direct messages rather than observable shared forums, and while decisions were being documented, not everybody knew where to find them. While we had tried to put in place processes to account for this, we were clearly missing the right processes to build alignment as a team. As a result, the team was forced to make assumptions to fill in those gaps, leading to work that often needed to be revisited as others filled in missing context during code review. As a team, we quickly revamped our processes to adapt, creating and documenting clear processes for sharing information as a team, aligning on where we were memorializing decisions, and emphasizing the importance of broadcasting information to the whole team. With changes to our internal communication processes, in just 4 weeks, we saw a 70% decrease in rework across the team and a 175% increase in the pull request throughput, translating to more launches and more learnings. We were fortunate to have observability in place before we went remote, which meant that when things started to feel slow, we could use that data to validate or disprove our intuition and could quickly determine where that slowdown was coming from. It wasn't where we initially guessed, but we were able to use the data to drill down and determine the right changes to make. We're also able to quickly measure whether the changes we put in place were working the way we intended. Would we have gotten there without looking at the data? Maybe. Our team is smart and does a great job of identifying and discussing challenges. However, I can confidently say that it would have taken a lot longer. And now, more than ever, responsiveness matters. This is just one of hundreds of examples that we've seen of how observability and engineering data can drive meaningful improvements in the ways that teams work. Of course, as with any change, introducing this practice into your organization needs to be done thoughtfully. Let's discuss a few of the approaches we recommend when transitioning to taking a data-driven approach to engineering leadership in order to empower your teams. The most important rule is that engineering data is not a substitute for skilled leadership. As a leader, you must be able to interpret this data in the context of your organization, your people, and your goals. However, data can help you level up as a leader to become more responsive and more proactive. It can also help you with much more. It can help you test your assumptions and check your instincts. You may feel like your team is moving faster or slower than usual, but with data, you can determine whether that's actually true. It can challenge your assumptions and help you acknowledge and address your own biases. We've worked with customers who have used data to dig deeper into performance reviews and have uncovered and addressed deep gender biases, not just in the way performance reviews were written, but in the kinds of comments that were given in day-to-day code reviews. It can also help you identify and understand long-term trends. In our case, we were able to see how throughput was trending both before and after our switch to remote. It can help you advocate for the resources that your team needs. You can objectively assess team capacity and compare it to your roadmap and historical productivity. And critically, it can help you communicate more effectively with teams beyond engineering, using data as the translation layer between technical and non-technical audience. It is also important that your team understands how this data will be used and how it won't be used. You should be transparent about your intention to use data within your team. I grew up listening to a lot of Radiohead, so perhaps it's unsurprising that one of my core values as a leader is no surprises. As I've introduced data-driven decision-making to the teams I've worked with, I always take great care to involve them in that process and to ensure that everybody is on the same page. I'm also transparent about how I intend to use this data to make decisions, what data I'm looking at, and why I think it's the right data to be examining. My teams know that this data is a starting point that helps me to identify what threads to pull on and what questions to ask to help my team do their best work, not to wield as a hammer to criticize the way they're approaching their work. And finally, I always take great care to place the data I'm observing in context. Every team is different, and every team constantly changes and evolves, facing new challenges and growing in unique ways. Let's tie this back to our infrastructure analogy. If you have no idea what products you're building, you can't reasonably identify whether a 10-second SLA or a 10-millisecond SLA is appropriate. Similarly, if you don't understand your team, your ability to set goals and derive insight from engineering data will be limited. Start by investing in building that understanding, and then maximize the impact of that understanding by applying it to real data. Great managers will do more than just avoid the pitfalls of data. They'll use it to empower their team to grow themselves. By providing access to data and creating a blameless culture, you give your team the tools they need to drive continuous improvement. To see this through, it's essential that team members feel safe flagging issues without worrying that they'll be penalized for doing so. Data can also play a key role here, helping you to keep conversations focused on facts and trends rather than individuals. A great way to start is to survey your teams and identify the problems, challenges, or points of friction that matter most to them. By working with your team members to use data in this way to solve a problem that's directly impacting them, not only will you solve that problem, you'll also illustrate the positive impact of engineering data and teach teams the value of pulling it in themselves. This creates a foundation on top of which you can involve your team in identifying challenges using that engineering data, and most importantly, in developing the solutions that work for them. Let's recap quickly. My experience leading teams has made one thing clear. In order to be a more proactive leader, you need to understand what is and isn't working within your teams. And for that, you need engineering data and a culture of observability. So where can you get this data? I mentioned before that it can be challenging to collect engineering data. You need to be able to quickly analyze, understand, and inspect that data. And in order to do that, you need to trust that the data you're looking at is complete, comprehensive, and unbiased. This is where tools like Velocity by CodeClimate can help. Velocity includes an engineering management platform that contextualizes data from DevOps, VCS, and project management tools so that you and your team can gain a holistic understanding about your engineering organization, allowing you to focus on driving the most important and meaningful changes. If you're interested in seeing how your own organization stacks up, reach out at https://g.codeclimate.com/CMG22. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you and enjoy the remainder of Impact 2022.
Hi, I'm Sherry Ann Bowling from CodeClimate. We're proud to be a platinum sponsor, and today I'm going to be demoing how Velocity can help your engineering org align, deliver, and improve. CodeClimate empowers software engineering organizations to achieve excellence across people, process, and code with data-driven insights. Our engineering intelligence products are trusted by thousands of organizations, from enterprises to startups, and we envision a world where engineering organizations and technology executives are empowered to drive innovation with transparency, efficiency, and alignment. We'll be walking through some of Velocity's most popular reports to align engineering initiatives with strategic priorities, accelerate software delivery, and drive continuous improvement. When we talk about driving improvement to productivity, what we're really talking about is output and speed. On the output side of things, we can use pull request throughput as a proxy for value being delivered. Each pull request represents a unit of work that has some value, whether it's implementing a feature, fixing a bug, or improving a part of the code base. Thus, a total count of merged pull requests can serve as a proxy for value being delivered. Having an understanding of output and the direction it's trending helps you see whether changes to the team are having the expected impact. This is a success metric to communicate progress both within and outside of the engineering organization. We can also add events here, any kind of reorganization, tooling change, or hiring initiative, for example, so we can see the impact of the changes we are making. A couple quick things to note before we walk through more of the application. Right now, we are looking at all contributors' data. In Velocity, you have the ability to create teams, nest teams, and put people on multiple different teams at the same time. This allows you to slice the data in multiple different ways, be it by creating a new hire team or a location-based team, etc. Anytime you see a metric underlined, you can scroll over it and click Learn More. You'll be able to view not only a definition of why it matters, but how to use it, and you can also view benchmark data. As I mentioned earlier, we have thousands of customers using our tools. This will show you how the top quartile is performing. If you're not sure where to drive improvements, this can be a great place to look and also learn about each metric. We talked a bit about output. On the other side of productivity, the first step to improving development speed is measuring how fast you've been historically, and of course, identifying bottlenecks in your processes. We look at cycle time, which encapsulates the time between first commit to when a PR is merged to production. This metric is a great success metric to gut check how your team's efficiency is improving. As a next step, Velocity breaks down cycle time into its constituent parts to point you to specific areas for improvement in your process. Time to open is a proxy for how long it takes to write a unit of work. It is measured by the first commit on a branch to PR open. Time to merge, conversely, is a proxy for how long the review process is taking. It is measured by the time it takes for a PR to go from open to merged. When you see this U-shape, it can indicate that there may be commonalities among these pieces of work that are taking substantially longer than your typical process and best practices. We can drill down throughout the application to see exactly which pieces of work this is coming from. Of course, you need context here as you're looking through. Maybe this had to take 165 hours, 200 hours to go through the review process. More likely, there are common issues that folks are running into. So now we have the data to drive conversations. We only went through 4+ metrics so far. There are 50+ metrics in Velocity, and once you're familiar with them, our analytics report provides the ability to create custom dashboards to test hypotheses and see correlations. So for example, let's say I have a gut instinct that time to merge or a review process is more highly correlated with our cycle time than, say, our time to open or time spent writing code. I can select all 3 metrics, customize the filters and groupings here, and then toggle on and off those metrics. So let's go ahead and do that now. I can also drill down here to see team data by contributor, application, repository, issue, epic type, sprint, among other ways to view this data. Now, our 360 reports help engineering managers with coaching. They're going to boost performance by identifying opportunities and giving them a complete picture of both their developers and teams' work habits and behaviors on a real-time and historical basis. Here they get a sense of who and what teams need help from more than one-on-one gut feelings and conversations. If I go ahead and select an individual, I can look at a snapshot of their activity. The snapshot points you to work that might need your attention by giving you a view into any active work that might be either long running, has a lot of back and forth in review, or maybe it's a very large piece of work. Today, most managers have to dig through to find commits or PRs in need of help, and here it's accessible for you. The Activity tab will allow you to visualize how your developers spend their time by giving you a visual representation of developers' work habits over the past weeks. The big question to ask here is, does a developer's work habits or behaviors match your expectations for how and what they should be working on? The size of the shapes here are the size of the activity, and in this case, it would be the size of the commit. The Foundations tab will help you drive continuous process improvements across your teams and people by quantifying key aspects of the software development lifecycle. Questions that can be answered from this tab are, does a dev have the time in their week to actually write code? Are they frequently multitasking? Do their PRs suffer from lots of back and forth? Are they actively participating in PR review process? This is, in addition, a great report to help with onboarding. By adjusting the settings here, we can see how this individual is ramping up to the rest of their team in their first 3 months. and where we can provide training and guidance. We can also click in to see how trends and specific pieces of work are driving these numbers. At the team level, we can see these same reports and some additional ones as well. At the team level, the activity tab gives visibility into how work is spread out across the team. Is something like review falling on just one person if we expect more team members to be involved? Is the team overloaded, or could we be putting more on their plate? We can also click Untraceable at the top here to see whether there is an excess of unplanned work happening. So work that isn't connected to, say, Jira. At the team level, foundations can be used to standardize processes and share successes across teams. If I notice my team is struggling in a specific area compared to the rest of the org, I can have a chat with other managers, determine what their team is doing differently, and where we might want to implement some changes. Now, once you've become familiar with your team's baseline and have found opportunities for improvement, you'll need a system for setting goals and measuring progress towards them. A strong goal-setting system is imperative for keeping yourself and your team accountable for changing behavior and also improving. Now, the way to think about targets is as a threshold system. We can use them to drive conversations with the team during retros and one-on-ones. So as an example, I'll create a target now to surface pieces of work whose time to merge, again, that's the review process, is taking more than 72 hours. We can see exactly where we have exceeded our team's process best practices, and we have the data to back conversations about these pieces of work on an ongoing basis. You'll also see work that might have been closed without merging, so work your team's doing that you're not really getting anything out of. So we really only touched the surface today on what velocity can do for your team. If you want to see more of velocity and what your data looks like so you can align, deliver, and improve, please reach out. We'd love to chat more with you.